In this episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks, been a while, monster CPUs with crazy core counts and sweet new mobile devices. Next. Happy Friday, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to another fine episode of Hot Hardware's 2.5 Geeks live stream. We're live. We're not Memorex. We're not dead yet. Dang it. Marco's here. Chris is here. How you doing, fellas?
Doing all right.
Yeah.
Out of order, though.
Out of order? They're out of order,
that's better.
Chris.
That's what happens when Marco shows up late.
If I show up late every podcast, you'd think you would figure this out then.
Yeah. Oh, you're such a jerk, aren't you? He's a Chris. By the way, I'm noticing you got a little fine hairdo. You're cropped tight now. You don't have the man from Uncle Beard, and you get the high and tight going on.
Yeah, I sheared a little bit. It's too hot and humid here in the summer to really grow anything out. So, practicality. I miss the main winters.
Brittany appreciate that or what? I'm imagining she does. She doesn't have to deal with the gorilla all the time,
I don't know. So.
Marco's looking crispy too. He's all fresh as a daisy for summer.
As fresh as I can get, I guess.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both. Well, it's been a while, folks, and sorry for our short leave of absence. It was necessary to get some work done. I almost said the S word. We might throw that in later. And we also have been trying to work on the schedule so it's a little bit more consistent for y'all, and also in keeping with our crazy schedule. So Fridays at 1 p.m. will be the new slot for now. I think
as I was setting up, I realized one problem with that though. It's a little early for beer 30.
That's completely subjective.
All right. I mean, if the boss says it,
speak for yourself. No, I mean, You know, I didn't say get drunk, but you can have a cold one as long as you keep working. Yeah. And I don't know about being the boss. I'm kind of like the ringleader of, the circus. Probably that's about it. But yeah. So this is what's up. This is the time slot for the foreseeable future. We think Friday afternoons is fun. Everybody's in a good mood. Marco might not be grumpy, and although he was already a little grumpy, I think he's less grumpy on Friday. So
yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I need to warn everybody up front though for this podcast. At this moment, I'm home alone with Super Sophie, and she just put on a movie that she laughs her butt off. So there's a strong possibility of crazy giggles during this podcast.
Crazy giggles and kid laughter. There's nothing wrong with that. That's that's good stuff. Excellent. Well, let's kick into the tech. And before we do, we got some quick hits, and we've got some serious meat, obviously, since the last time we met. We've got lots to discuss. And things with many cores, which is cool. But what are you guys working on? What's in the lab? Why don't you go around the horn? Chris, what you got cooking over there?
As you say that, my mind goes blank. I'm finishing up a project on the hot tech side of the house. Trying to think, I've had a few companies say they're going to be sending me stuff to review, but nothing has shown up quite yet. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, wait a minute now. You just had a bunch of webcams you were playing with, right? And what else? You had something else too.
Oh, that I've finished?
Yeah, that you have in the works that you can talk about.
I think he finished. I think he's caught up.
All right. Oh, well, that's not for long.
Yeah, no. A lot of what we're going to be talking about today is stuff I've just done.
Okay.
But yeah, just one of those weird little lulls where I'm catching up on other things.
You actually have a moment to breathe. That's not allowed. Marco, what you got cooking?
I am, unfortunately, as I look at the folders on my desktop, eight articles deep at the moment. In the short term, I have the high-end Radeon Pros that I should have. I'm actually going to try to finish that review today, so we can post that early next week. The W7900 and W7800. Just got a couple of new SSDs in that I'm probably going to dole out to folks. Oh, the most important thing, this one that it's been stalled out for weeks. I have Xeon W in hand, so I have to do a Xeon W build video and get those reviewed. So yeah, that's going to be a beast.
That's more many cores, and the nice thing is that's Workstation. That's server class CPU and a Workstation chassis. That's cool.
Exactly.
Excellent, Smithers. All right. Well, hey,
do we want to jump to a system featuring one of those real quick, or
sure?
Sure. Yeah, show it real quick, just to be tease.
So yeah, one of the things I recently covered was this HP Z8 Fury G5 workstation with a 56-core Xeon chip at its heart, Xeon W, as well as 4 NVIDIA RTX A6000 professional GPUs. So for workstation loads. I mean, can only go so far. But yeah, this thing is literally packed with compute. Here's the 4. I had to pull them out, of course, because it's crazy.
Oh yeah, it's beautiful.
But yeah, great, well-built system, very professional, server-grade interiors, all of that. You get the dual redundant. So these power supplies can be redundant, or they can work in aggregate to deliver up to 2.2 kilowatts of power.
Nice.
And the workloads I was running was pushing up north of 1.5 kilowatts, so you can certainly use it. And I'm sure there's going to be some particular transient spikes and other things that'll push it to the full limit. So a lot of juice. You do need to run it on 2 separate circuits, 20 amp circuits, 240 volts if you can. But yeah, this thing is packed with storage. You can put north of 100 terabytes out of the factory from it, between all the SSDs and the hard drives you can put in there. But yeah, it's absolutely loaded with the 4 RTX A6000s and then the 56-core Xeon W chip at its core. Great performer if you can leverage multiple GPUs with your workloads. So a lot of things like Blender can, depending on the rendering agent you're using. So Cycles will work with it, but the Eevee renderer is still single GPU, so it depends on there. Video encode with like or decode with the DaVinci Resolve, the Blackmagic
speed test.
speed test. Absolutely crazy results with that. Let me get this out of the way so I can quickly scroll to it. But very, very premium system. Obviously a premium price. It sits in north of $20,000, but for this level of compute and, you know, the professional ISV certifications and all of that, it's also kind of a bargain in some respects. So I just want to show quickly that DaVinci result, because I mean, when I put this into the chart and built this out, like, that just made me laugh maniacally that it's crushing every other thing we've tested. I mean, the Dell Precision system here with a single A6000 was already very impressive with its 3-to-1 compression 8K result because of its memory bandwidth. But then to take that to a whole other level with 4 of these GPUs was just insane.
Cool. Good stuff.
You know what's really nuts? We have to get past this one, but it sounds crazy to say $24,000. Just the GPUs are 20 grand, right? So it actually is not insanely priced considering what's in there.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's like used pricing.
Yeah. 4 times 5K a card. That's no joke. Well, hey, that's good stuff. Check it out. I dropped a link in the chat for y'all. That is the HP Fury Z8 Fury G5 workstation. Good stuff, Chris. Let's move on to some quick hits. And this is what I've been playing with lately. This is the Nothing Phone 2. I'm just going to mention it because we're going to come back to that shortly. Miriam from our team took a look at it, but I've been kicking the tires as well. Yeah, there you go. There's the beauty right there. But let's hit some quick hits in the news, and we'll do the rapid fire round because we've got a lot to discuss later on in the meat section here. But Razer Blade 14 review, Zen 4 powered mobile Powerhouse. There it is right there, built with some Zen 4 mobile silicon from AMD, and pretty loaded for bear, as a lot of Razer's gaming machines are. This is a 14-inch machine. I'm not sure what the weight is on it, but it's pretty svelte.
Just over 4 pounds.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you for that. And yeah, looking at RTX 4070 on board, 7940 HS processor. So that is Zen 4 with Radeon 780M graphics. So what is that? RDNA 3 graphics, right? 8 cores, 16 threads. And yeah, that is, and it boosts up to 5.2 gigahertz max. So really nice machine. Scored well, certainly in the benchmarks, as you might expect. Marco, anything else to offer?
No, you hit all the good salient points. Awesome 240 hertz display on there. And you know, it's a 14-inch form factor, so it's not going to hang with the big bad boys with HX series processors and bigger GPUs. But if you want a highly portable, really fast, you know, it's just a hair over 4 pounds, and you know, the 14-inch form factor is very portable. Super nice machine. I really liked it.
Very nice. So that's from Razer, the Razer Blade 14. Check that out. I dropped a link in the chat there. Let's talk about the RTX 4060, Marco, that you reviewed recently. It's been a while. We're playing some catch up here, folks. But there's the Asus dual card, 8 gig. It is an overclocked OEM RTX 4060. Thoughts there, and then we'll keep skipping along here.
Yeah, you know, competent 1080p card GPUs. It's such a controversial area now to have a 1080p GPU with 8 gigs. So the reception wasn't particularly great for the 4060, and for the 16 gig model, NVIDIA didn't even seed reviewers. So there's only a handful of reviews out there. You know, you have to look at this from a couple different standpoints. Yeah, if you already have a 3060, you're not going to want to upgrade to a 4060. But if you're on a 1060 or a previous gen Radeon, there's really no better $299 option at this point. So, you know, it fills the slot NVIDIA wanted it to fill. You know, it would have been great if it was priced a little lower, but, you know, it does what it's supposed to do for NVIDIA.
Yeah, for a $300 card, good if you're doing a budget build for sure, and you need some entry-level gaming with the latest juice DLSS 3 and
Exactly.
ray tracing support and all that good stuff. So cool. Very cool. And then we'll drop this one in for our friends at MSI. We'll keep skipping along quickly here too, though. MSI's first foray into wireless routers. You check that out. The RadiX AXE 6600 Wi-Fi 6E router. Had a few little gotchas along the way. I think they're still cutting their teeth from a software standpoint. Performance is good, but really these days you're either in the camp of high-end gaming router like this, which offers a lot of bandwidth, a lot of connectivity, certainly Wi-Fi 6E, much more capacity, or you're in the mesh camp where you need to cover some ground. This is more for the former, where you're just looking for all-out performance and not quite as much reach. But if you need mesh, MSI doesn't have that at the ready yet. But standalone, and if you're in that camp, it's a solid router for sure. So check that out. We already talked
angular
about
lines make it faster, right?
Oh yeah, well, it looks like a battleship. Yes, of course, the bling. And we already talked about the Z8 Fury G5 workstation. That's covered. Let's talk about this real quick. MacBook Pro 16 with M2 Max on board. Apple once again impresses with low power silicon that delivers real good punch for the power envelope. And I mean, this thing versus previous generation devices lit up the benchmarks as you might expect. M2 Max
hurts us to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know we're technologists. We're kind of agnostic. We like anything that's good or hot, as the case may be. 12 core CPU, 38 core GPU. So it's about as dialed as you can get in a 16-inch MacBook these days. And check that out from DL Cade, who's new with us here at Hot Hardware. Good review for sure. You should check that out if you're interested in the Mac. Yes, he did a good job. And then two more quick things, and then we'll dig in to the meat. Ryzen. Let's see. I'm blanking on this. Ryzen and AMD announces Ryzen 9 7945HX 3D, its fastest mobile gaming CPU yet. So this is a beast. It is 16 cores, 32 threads, and 3D V-Cache on board. Thoughts on that, Marco? 3D V-Cache in a laptop sounds like a thermal challenge to me. I don't know.
No, I think it's going to be great. So with all of the X3D enabled, desktop CPUs currently, AMD's got to lower the clocks, right? They lower the clocks on the CPU cores, but in the mobile space specifically, now we haven't tested it yet. I'm hoping we get our hands on one, but AMD is actually claiming that running the CPU at lower clock, more efficient state and throwing that 3D V-Cache on there in terms of percentage of performance increase, it's a bigger percentage performance increase than the desktops, right? So in terms of gaming notebooks, now we looked at an Asus 17-inch SCAR machine with the standard 7945, right? And that was one of the fastest gaming notebooks we've looked at. You throw this V-Cache on there, and assuming, right, you're probably going to get better efficiency because there's less calls out to main memory. So exactly. I'm really interested to see how this handles battery life while gaming. So I'm optimistic for this one, but we haven't tested it yet.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I didn't think of it in that regard. The scaled back clocks and the fact that some gaming workloads can stay resident on chip rather than fetching out to memory. Yeah, could find some interesting results. So we'll have to check that out. Cool.
Yeah, no,
cool.
Definitely. Really looking forward to it. I hope we get our hands on one soon.
Yeah, we have one in the request queue, correct?
As soon as we got the announcement, I said, "What are you guys doing with sampling on this?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
send one now.
Always one to beat around the bush.
Yeah, please.
Please send one now. All right, and then the last thing we'll talk about here, another first foray in the tech space for OnePlus this time, the OnePlus Keyboard 81 Pro. That would be it right there. It is a compact form factor, as you can see. It's get just only one little row on the side there. You don't have a full numpad going on, but if you need that, if you like that compact form factor, it is customizable. You can see the keycap puller there. And Marco, I'm going to let you go through that, but because you're the keyboard snob, but Ryan really liked it.
Yeah, so if you like this, 81 keys compact form factor, this is so none of these boards are cheap, right? If you're looking at these high-end customizable boards, little pricey. This guy's just over, I think it's $219, but really cool board. So their OnePlus is offering two different keycap styles. What you see here is PBT. The PBT is a very durable keycap, doesn't get all shiny and gross, but I believe they're claiming they developed a new material called, it's something mallow. It sounds like a marshmallow, but I'm forgetting the name. But that's on a different version with different switches. But hot swappable switches, aluminum chassis, dampened board to hold the switches in place, so it's not like all pingy and ringy like some really rigid boards can be. There's a little a dial at the top for bringing different customizations, and you can customize it. The firmware is customizable using it's called VIA. So the VIA website that works with these open source firmware, so you could customize your layouts and keys. It's got RGB lighting, so it's really a fully loaded customizable board for a shade over $200.
Nice, good stuff.
Yep.
That is the OnePlus Keyboard 81 Pro, and come check that out. I will drop did I drop the link in the chat? I didn't. I will do that right now. And Ryan from our team. Oh, I did? Oh, my bad. Oh, there you go. Anyways, Ryan from our team. I'm only dropping it into YouTube. That was why. Ryan from our team did a great job with that. Sorry about the double link in there, folks, but just making sure all the fans can see him on multiple platforms. So come check that out if you're interested in a new compact form factor keyboard. All right, let's move into the meat, shall we, gents? Because we shan't delay anymore. We got a lot to talk about on the meaty side of things, but let's start with the mobile stuff, and then we'll get to Chris's big iron, finale at the end with some serious core counts, Bergamo and Bergamo. How do you say that? I say Bergamo because I'm Italian, but it's Bergamo.
Yeah,
right?
I've been hearing Bergamo, but
yeah, I have too. I like Bergamo. I think it should be Bergamo. Hey, pass the Bergamo. It's a nice Bergamo. Huh?
Yeah, I put the Italian spin on it too.
Anyway, sorry about that. I knew that, but anyways, let's start with some mobile stuff first. And actually, Marco, because I've been yapping a little bit, why don't we talk about the Nothing Phone 2 first, which is right next to me, and I'll offer some opinion on. But I know you checked out Miriam's coverage on this yourself, and probably were. I don't know. You have some thoughts there, I would imagine.
I do. So Nothing Phone 2, it's pretty cool. So it's not completely bleeding edge. It's still based on Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. But if we encompass Miriam's coverage, right, she kind of billed it as it felt like an iPhone, right, with the rounded corners and the screen setup, but with a bunch of unique features. And just looking at that hero image right at the top of the article, right, it's obvious that there's some standout features on this phone that aren't on other devices. So that's not just a gimmick for the lighting on the back. You actually can customize it so you get different, say, notifications depending on what's happening on the phone. It's a really interesting design. I kind of dig it. How about you? Now you've had it in hand. I haven't held it. Do you like how that looks in real life?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I think it's a beautiful device in person. The build quality is excellent. Unfortunately, mine's dead right now, battery wise, but the build quality is excellent. It's got brushed aluminum or kind of like a matte aluminum edges. But it's real well built, nice glass finish on the back that sort of encases that lighting effect that you talked about. It's Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1, so it's the newer, more performant version of the 8 Gen 1. The glyph notifications in the back are great for things like letting you know who's calling if you have the phone face down and you're trying to be on kind of like a DND, but you can see some lights blinking, someone's calling in. And it allows for a whole different type of notification interface. So it's really neat that way. It's unique. The cameras are solid. The performance felt good. I did have an issue with Android Auto. And I was actually very tempted to run it as a daily driver for me. I'm currently on a OnePlus phone right now. And I had too many issues with Android Auto with the phone that I had to bail on that idea as a daily driver, because I literally, I wanted to have the Android Auto on a regular basis. I think that's temporary. And frankly, Android Auto can be a hot mess sometimes, to be honest.
Yes.
So, my OnePlus phone works well enough, but not perfect either. So display is beautiful. Is it like a 160 hertz, 120 hertz display, Marco? Right? I forget what it is.
Well, and it's variable refresh too, up to 120.
Right. Yeah. So, a well-appointed phone for sure, for not a lot of money. What's MSRP on this thing again?
Right. So like you kind of hit a bunch of the points that I was going to throw out there. So Miriam liked the camera. Miriam likes the camera, likes the screen, likes the design, right? So it nails 3 bullets right there. Battery life was good, and the price starts at only $599. So it might not be right up there with the latest Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 devices, but it is still super fast, right? It's flagship level performance starting at $599. That's like half the price of some of the current flagships right now. So really cool phone, I think.
Yeah, competition for the pixels.
Well, that, and you get kind of everything too. Like it's got 45-watt fast charging, but it's also got wireless charging. And frankly, I was scratching my head when OnePlus came out with the OnePlus 11 5G, Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, that next generation of Snapdragon platform from Qualcomm that frankly we know and love pretty well. That's great silicon. It doesn't have wireless charging on the OnePlus 11. I'm like, what's up with this? It's a flagship without wireless charging. They were trying to keep the cost down, but somehow nothing, which always freaks me out to just say nothing figured out how to keep the cost down on the phone and pack in wireless charging. So I don't know. I think the compromises made to keep costs down were right. I think the mobile platform is still plenty strong. To notice the difference between Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 and Gen 2, you got to kind of be a real mobile performance, geek, gamer or something like that. The average mainstream user, majority of the mainstream market probably won't notice much of a difference. It's still pretty performant, obviously.
As I'm scrolling through these photo samples here, keep in mind that these are blown up in-body images here. If you want the high resolution, come over to the site. You can click on these images and get a higher resolution look at them. But the color rendition of these is quite nice. And when you do look at these properly, they do have good detail and all that as well. So good cameras on this.
Yeah. So I'm going to probably revisit this device for a daily driver. I'm going to give it a little bit more time on the firmware side. Personally, that was just my thing. I wanted a little bit better Android Auto experience, and I went looking around online to see if anybody else had issues with it. Couldn't really find it yet. I think it's just new, so that'll work the kinks out, I'm sure. Anything else on this, Marco, that we missed? It's how's battery life?
Battery life was good. I'm going to go double check, but I'm fairly certain it was like right in the, in the upper quadrant, and it was good. There was no super negatives on the phone. Miriam, I guess, didn't try the Android Auto, so that wasn't reported. She actually really liked the software on the phone, but we should say Miriam has seen every mobile device in the universe, and this one earned her editor's choice. So of course, with the new phone using the latest Android, there's going to be some things, right? There's obviously Dave uncovered a bug, but overall, really nice device. Now, she didn't, the actual battery chart never made it into the review, I think because she is in Korea right now with Samsung. But, battery life easily lasted a day.
Yeah. We got to look that up and update the review, I think, and get the battery life numbers in there. My experience with it, and I ran it for about a week as a daily driver. Absolutely lasts about a day. It's no problem. Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 actually had it was a shrink from Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, the non-plus version. And so they did do some power optimization. There's some performance optimization, but there's some power optimization as well. So I think the 750 milliwatt hour battery that's on there in the phone is just fine. It's plenty performant. I really like the fact that it's got wireless charging. I miss my wireless charging on the OnePlus 11. It's like, come on, bring it back.
Got my wireless charger here on my desk, and my phone just sits there during the day, and don't have to worry about it a bit.
Yeah, and I've got a newer car, newer to me. I got a 2021 vehicle that has wireless charging built in, and I'd love to just drop it on there instead of having to hook it up and have the wire floating around the seat and all that. So yeah, bring it back, OnePlus. Nothing was able to do it. You can too, right? So all right, cool, good stuff. Anything else? I think we covered it, right?
Yeah, I think we hit all the points on that guy.
All right, I'm gonna have to keep yapping on this one a little bit too, unfortunately for you guys. But Dell's Latitude 9440 review. I actually took a look at this one myself as well. 14-inch 2-in-1 laptop superiority is what we entitled it, and this is a really impressive machine. Actually, candidate for a daily driver for me as well. And when you talk about editor's choice, that's kind of, I mean, like verbatim, this editor would choose it. But we didn't give it. We gave it a recommended, and there were a couple of small holdbacks that really, were minor, frankly, just short of it. But we'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, 14-inch machine, has Intel 13th Gen on board. As a matter of fact, a Core i7-1365U, so 15-watt TDP, boost to 5.2 gigahertz. Our machine came with 512 gig PCI Express 4 SSD. Kind of puzzled on that. We'll get back to that in a minute. 32 gigs of RAM, DDR5 6000. It is soldered on the board. They've got 8, 16, and 32 gig configurations. So at least, if you want to pony up for more RAM and have, that future proofing for memory footprint, you can do that. The display is fantabulous. It is not a high refresh display. It's a 60 hertz display, but it's 2516 by 1600, so 16 by 10 format, 500 nits. It is anti-reflective. It's low blue light, and it's touch. And so in a 14-inch machine, that's kind of my Goldilocks resolution, for lack of better words. I know that's getting cliche lately, but it's perfect, I believe, 2560 by 1600. And then all the usual other trimmings, Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.3 and all that good stuff. Also on board is a pretty nice webcam. It has the safety shutter, has an IR camera for Windows Hello. It also has presence detect. And the thing's freaky. You can set on gaze detection, and you look away from it, the display goes dim. You look back at it, the display pops back up full bright. And so it's really good. It also locks if you walk away from the machine automatically. So, really good in terms of battery life conservation on that as well. Let's see what else. Three Thunderbolt 4 ports, which is nice. Wish they had an SD card slot. And performance was solid. It is a 15-watt SKU, a U SKU Intel chip, but performance is solid and sort of, I guess, what we expected, in line with, it's going to fall a little bit behind the, what is it? What's the next TDP up? Is it 25 or 28? I'm forgetting.
Yeah, it's up to 28, but it can even go higher
for the P. For the P series SKUs. But yeah, no, I mean, it hangs. It's right there in the benchmarks. Really,
one thing
nice
I really like
keyboard
on the design of the hinge is how the lid kind of sits back to give you that little bit of angular tilt that a lot of these 2-in-1 devices, the hinge part here would actually come up and lift the display higher. I really like how they've made that sit back.
Yeah, it does actually lift. It does actually lift the machine a little bit as well when you tilt it up. It's a really good display setup. I love the zero lattice keyboard. Okay, there's like no lattice. It's basically what it is. There's no frame in between the keycaps. Key travel is good. It's got good tactility. It's about as good as any. I would say, for me, darn close to being as good a keyboard as a Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Carbon. And then also, yes, Chris is circling the haptic touchpad that has a whole user interface for web conferencing. So currently only works with Zoom. Teams is coming. in the near future. So in the next month or two, kind of thing. But those little icons light up on the pad when you fire up Zoom, and you've got controls for things like presenting your screen, for shutting off your mic, or muting your mic, or flipping your camera on and off. Really thoughtful feature add, and I think kind of should be default for at least almost every business oriented laptop in the market moving forward, because we're all doing this video conference thing now in a big way, and so love to see that. Any thoughts on that, guys?
I think it's a beautiful machine. Like it's you get an XPS vibe, but from the business line from Dell. So it's super attractive machine. Really like it. I love the way the keyboard looks. The thing that put me off, and I think this is one of the reasons that you didn't give it an EC. It says the specs say it's a PCIe Gen 4 drive, but it performs like a Gen 3 drive. Like it maxes out at just over 3 gigs a second. Now that's fine. That's perfectly fine. Like it's not slow, right? But when other notebooks in this same realm are doing 6 gigs a second with a better SSD, it's like, why did you hold it back?
Yeah. So this machine starts at $1,900, and it's almost $2,800 as tested. And so that was my gotcha that held back the editor's choice. It's recommended. We highly recommend the machine. You're not going to be, is it worth the money? Absolutely. I think, the two gotchas, the two knots, we have hots and knots on hot hardware. The two knots I put in there were lackluster SSD performance and no micro SD card reader. The second one, micro SD card reader, is pretty trivial these days. Not many are putting them in anymore for some reason. But yeah, you're looking at that SSD performance right there. There's the Atto run I did, and it was barely kissing 3 gigabytes per second. Excuse me. With a PCI Express Gen 4, connectivity on the Intel 13th Gen platform, you easily could get a more performant SSD in there without spending a lot more on cost. So that kind of was a head twister. But again, this is one of those things where the average mainstream consumer probably not going to notice.
Yep, exactly.
But then you look at some of the benchmarks. You just saw the responsiveness benchmark, the speedometer benchmark there. That 13th gen processor is still pretty snappy, even though it's a 15-watt SKU. As you can see, it's right up there at the top. It's when you get to heavier workloads that you start to see it slot in with more closer to 12th gen performance but a P SKU versus a P SKU 12th gen for Intel. A higher power 12th gen chip, but behind a little bit from a P SKU 13th gen chip. So, but good stuff. Dell, once again, it's a beautiful machine, and I'm seriously considering asking Dell if I can hang on to it for a little bit, but they usually want them back, so we'll send it back begrudgingly.
So a couple of comments from Nevin from YouTube. He's saying he would love to see an AMD Phoenix version of this machine. So would we. Phoenix, Dave took a look at an HP. What was it, HP Dragonfly a few weeks back.
Dragonfly Pro, yeah, man.
Yeah, based on Phoenix. And it's such a strong machine for the form factor. And, Nevin also chimed in to say Intel's been using the same iGPU for a few years, and it's a downside. On one hand, we would probably tend to agree you want the tech to advance. But in this class of machine, the iGPU that's in there is more than enough, So,
yeah,
you got to balance it out.
Yeah. You can see the 680M here. It's better, but not by it. It's not going to make a difference in your workflow going from 2,500 points to 3,500.
Or even
so it's just when you're 13, 14-inch machines, they're just going to be limited on graphics power as a compromise.
Yeah,
go for that Razer.
Yeah, unless it's a gaming laptop, which, business class machines. Yeah, absolutely. I just dropped a link in the chat to the Dragonfly Pro. We talked about that a little ways back. In terms of battery life, though, getting back to the Dell machine, the Latitude 9440, battery life was excellent as well, and was just in behind that HP Dragonfly Pro machine. 819 minutes which I'd have to do the math. Let's do that real quick. That is over 13 and a half hours of uptime, untethered, looping video, local video loop back, by the way. So that's how we test. Calibrated displays, local video loop back, always on at a reasonable brightness, not crazy bright, but not dim either. You still can see it nicely. And the thing hangs for over 13 and a half hours. So, and with a 1600p display versus a 1080p display in the Dragonfly Pro. So very respectable battery life and excellent. So, man, if the SSD was only just a little bit better, I would have been all in on the EC. That just held me back. But man, it's a tough one. Like that could change. Maybe they change out the SKU later on, and the SSD performance comes up a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. That happens often with notebooks.
Yeah. They qualify multiple SSD vendors and ship what's available or what's more performant based on cost, and cost is always changing. So yeah, great stuff. So Dell Latitude 9440 2-in-1. It actually is, has the full 360-degree swing hinge. Highly recommended if you're looking for a business class machine and you want to splurge really, because it's a higher end machine for sure. If you want, kind of the best of Intel's mobile experience right now in a thin and light business class. Excellent example of that with Dell.
Yep. So
there you go. All right. Well, I think we're to the main event. Let's talk about the many core beasts from AMD, and there they are. Chris took a look at these. He actually has had screaming servers, or has screaming servers still in his lab. AMD Bergamo.
Not screaming currently, but like 90 decibels each.
Yeah, there you go. AMD Bergamo and Genoa-X performance review EPYC chips for big iron workloads. That is the title of Chris's extraordinary deep dive into the performance of these server chips. Chris, 128 cores, get out of town. 3D V-cache on the Genoa-X. Serious business.
So I really want to cover how they got to 128 cores on one of these chips, but I think it makes more sense to start with the Genoa-X breakdown because it is something that they have done before. We had Milan in the 3rd generation, and then Milan X with 3D V-cache added on top. So that's basically giving high performance compute workloads a lot more on-chip memory to work with, so that they can keep their workloads closer to the compute and basically burn through particular workloads very, very well. One thing you will find that hopefully is a good sign for that mobile X3D chip we just discussed is when you look at the specs between the 9684X I have here with 96 cores and the 9654, which is the regular Genoa chip without 3D V-cache and 96 cores. As you look across the specs, you find the default TDP, 400 watts for both, 320 to 400 watts configurable TDP range. But more impressively, the clock speed ratings are actually about the same. I think it's 2.5 on Genoa versus 2.55 for your base clock on Genoa-X, going up to 3.7 as your max boost. So at least on paper, you're not giving up any clock frequency to go with the 3D V-cache part. Now, there are some asterisks that because when you have more cache on the chip, it's going to be consuming more power just to run the memory. So there's still some consideration, and as we get into the benchmarks, you'll see that. But yeah, basically the Genoa-X parts are Genoa with that layer of 3D V-cache stapled on top to give them 1.1 gigabytes of cache on the processor, which is awesome.
Yeah, man.
Can I interrupt you? I don't want to mess up your flow. Can I interrupt for one quick second?
Go.
So when we were getting briefed on this, I was out at AMD's event when they were showing it off, and something that gets lost, and like it's kind of tough to show in benchmarks, right? Because we have limited time and to pull this off. But some of AMD's clients with these 3D V-cache EPYC chips, you see better than linear scaling with the Genoa-X because at some point that cache pool becomes so big that customers, even big data customers, it fits on the CPU all the time, and performance just skyrockets. So it's such an insane amount of cache It's just
Right.
wild. I just wanted to throw that
I
data
just want
point
to
in
say, now imagine
Yeah.
this with something like the Intel Xeon Max approach that puts HBM on the
there. Right.
on the package as well, and then things would really fly. But we can wish for the future. So yeah, that's Genoa-X. It's awesome, high performance compute oriented. Bergamo is a very different approach. So it's still that Zen 4 at its heart. Very similar structure. You're still getting the central IO die flanked by the different CCDs. But the CCDs themselves are different. So these are
Mm.
using the Zen 4C architecture, which takes the Zen 4 layout and compresses it down in area by like 40%. I think I've got the number here somewhere. So basically, much smaller physical footprint, so that they can actually put 16 cores instead of just 8 on a single CCD chip. There are some concessions with that. Mainly, you get half the level 3 cache of Genoa per core, and you get lower clock speeds as well because everything is because everything's closer together. They can't run the clocks as fast without it kind of getting some. It affects how much frequency they can push through the literal circuits of the chip. So you have some considerations with that, and also the through silicon vias that enable 3D V-cache to be put on top of the chip is removed as well. So we're not going to see a 3D V-cache version of the Zen 4C chips. But you get a lot of cores with this. So with Genoa-X, you get up to 12 CCDs on the package to give you the 96 cores. Bergamo is 8 CCDs, but because there's 16 cores, that gives you 128 cores per chip, 256 threads, which is just a lot. Yeah, you are losing cache, you are losing clock speeds, but for web first cloud type workloads where density is king, they don't necessarily care about the reduced cache. They don't necessarily care about the lower clock speeds. They're going to benefit in that scale from density. So these are much more, both the Genoa-X and Bergamo are very purpose built chips for particular customers. They're not big markets, of course. But if you're just looking for a web server to, or just a regular server to run whatever workloads, Genoa is still probably going to be your go-to, as we'll get into the benchmarks. But
well, what occurs to me is that as you said, Chris, purpose built, right? So what occurs to me is that the two main players here, Intel and AMD, and there's certainly others coming into the market these days, Ampere and the likes of TensorTorrent and things like that. Pretty cool stuff. But when it comes to the way they approach the market, Intel and AMD, Intel went with this accelerator approach for Sapphire Rapids. It's specialized as well. It sort of caters to certain workloads, whether it be, I don't know, web compression technology or IPsec acceleration, things like that. Whereas AMD took a different approach where they have a purpose-built core architecture and or memory structure in the case of Genoa-X to address different markets. And that's what I think what's interesting in the nuance of the benchmarks that you're going to get to next is that you'll see Genoa-X has a very specific market, data science and other markets that have these large workloads that can fit in that cache and benefit from that more than linear scaling that Marco talked about. And then Bergamo, where, as you said, Chris, cloud native core density per socket is king. The more physical cores we can get and the more threads we can get on a chip, the better, for just general purpose compute in the cloud. So, cool stuff. And it's interesting the way the two juggernauts are going at it differently. But I'm sorry, why don't you go ahead and dive in there, Chris?
Yeah. So 2 socket systems we're testing here, which gives you, so Genoa-X, that gives you up to 384 threads. With Bergamo, that's 512 threads in the system. Like, just
crazy,
absolutely nutty. This is outfitted with 1.5 terabytes of RAM. I think the Intel system has a terabyte. I forget. I'd have to go back and check. plenty for the workloads I'm running in any case. So here we have CoreMark, which is just a really quick and dirty compute potential assessment of the chips. And so you see that 128 core, really 512 thread configuration just way out in front. Huge amounts of potential there, as long as the cache isn't stressed. We see the Genoa-X chip slightly trail the Genoa chip. So even though they are clock for clock on paper the same, you are in pure compute situations losing out just a little bit through most workloads. So Genoa can still have its edge there. So this is where we kind of get our first taste of the 3D V cache. So the decompression workload is basically pure compute to decompress. But as you're compressing in 7-zip, it really stresses the cache of the chips a lot. And so that's where you see the Genoa-X chip in the yellow bar come just ahead of the regular Genoa. Little bit of a lead there, but we're going to see better. So Linux kernel compilation, no real surprises here other than you start to see the cache stress and the Bergamo chip fall off despite its higher core count. So lower is better here. But at the same time, the 64 core EPYC Genoa part is our current leader by a hair, not a huge difference between the chips. Moving to a larger build of the Linux kernel, we kind of see the same striation. Not too much new there. DeCapo benchmark is it's for I think an interpreter for Python developers who want to write for Java, basically. Very small workloads ultimately, so we're seeing these big chips fall off in performance. It favors the 32 core lighter core stuff. Yeah, Blender here, we see Bergamo. Again, sheer compute. It's taking the lead, and we're seeing Genoa-X lose a little bit to Genoa. But I want to get down to, I'm looking for, so we have SQL, nothing too revolutionary there. Both these chips kind of fall off again relative to the mainstream Genoa. So if you're running, PostgreSQL database, just regular Genoa is probably where you want to be. The web server. So I should caution these Apache and Nginx benchmarks through the Phoronix test suite that we use for testing don't necessarily scale to the whole chip perfectly well. So you're going to see some very compressed scaling here. Typically, these workloads would be run many times on a particular server like this rather than one monolithic installation. So maybe not the best look at situations, but here we can see this is an approach where the Intel Xeons with their accelerators are able to pull ahead of the EPYC chips. So that it's kind of, you'll see a lot of dominance with the AMD chips, but the Intel processors still have those places with their accelerators where they can punch back and see some significant gains. We'll see in AI in a bit, or with hashing here with the Y-hash, again, has Intel up top because they have those fixed function accelerators that are really good at that and very efficient. Now we can get into, just those pin counts on these chips.
Yeah, I know. It's nuts.
So many pins. So some AI workloads with TensorFlow. VGG16 is pretty CPU friendly, scores well with cores. That's not the case with the other TensorFlow workflows. So AlexNet, GoogleNet, and ResNet 50. These chips just aren't performing great for them. They're not built for AI workloads in the same way that Genoa or the Xeon with the fixed function accelerators are. But when you have an AI workload like DeepSparse from Neural Magic, which is pruned down and purpose-built to run on CPUs, they do very well. We see Bergamo, again, way out in front, almost 100 items per second in the async workload ahead of Genoa. And in the synchronous...
Chris, I'm sorry, in a couple of the tests where Genoa-X kind of significantly trails original Genoa, is that just strictly clock?
It's hard to say exactly because because when they settle the ultimate clock speeds, they both settle right around 3.1 gigahertz all core, from what I was monitoring. But I think that the Genoa-X is clocking down a little bit sooner.
Gotcha.
And I haven't necessarily gotten the resolution to say for certain. Having power go to the cache that's not being used for particular workloads could also be part of the equation.
Gotcha.
But here, so moving to the synchronous deep sparse, you are stressing that cache, and we see Genoa-X come out way ahead of the Genoa part, while the cache strapped Bergamo chip falls down. So it's you get much more into a workload versus workload. These chips are less consistent because they're built for specific workloads. If you're not running the workloads that they're going to fly in, they're not the chips to buy, and it's kind of that simple. So convolution, 1DNN, these chips don't do that well. The training and inference workloads, similarly, not great. It just takes them a lot longer than 32 core chips. Not built for this workload. That's fine. You just need to know it. Embreeze, this is a path tracing benchmark. And we see both chips actually ahead of Genoa by quite a bit. So this one is stressing the cache, but it also cares a lot about cores. So it's kind of a place where Bergamo can still perform well, but Genoa-X is also going to be doing great work for you relative to Genoa. The Pavre.
Good old Pavre.
Yeah, Pavre, we see Genoa-X virtually identical. That's a margin of error kind of score. But you are losing out with the 128 core parts just by a little bit. Not bad. It's not a bad result, but in terms of your scaling and if you're really min-maxing your optimizations, it's not the chip for that. But if you occasionally need to run a Pavre workload, you can.
Rendering is on the CPU. Yep.
Yeah. Intel Open Image Denoise. So this is taking, particularly when you have a ray tracing to generate an image and you get a lot of noise in there as a result, and you need to run a denoising algorithm to get a usable image out of it. It's used a lot in cinema, for animated films and the like. Very important workload. And you can see those cores in Bergamo, take the lead for that, even outpacing Intel chips. And this is Intel's own workload. So very impressive there. This is where we really get into Genoa-X's stride. So this is the Australian Square Kilometer Array Pathfinder. So taking huge radio telescope data sets, and then it's performing convolutional resampling on the signals that it's getting to basically do the processing to get something usable for the researchers to use. And this is like a 40 or 50% uplift over Genoa just by adding the 3D cache. So this is the case where you look at this and it just makes sense, because you're working with these massive data sets. It's going into cache, and the 3D cache parts are just awesome for that. Monte Carlo simulations, on the other hand, while very, very common in physics research and financial simulations and all of that, it's built on very small samples, so not stressing the cache so much. It's something where having a higher clock core in the 32, 64 core parts is just better. So it's kind of it's fun to see these different workloads and how they respond differently to different chips. And ultimately, that's why having all these different options for your silicon are so important. And do your homework to find out which workloads you're running and what works with them well.
Yeah.
The other place for Genoa-X is open foam. So this is fluid dynamics. This first one's looking at the aerodynamics of a motorbike. This is a basic mesh time, figuring out the mesh of the motorcycle, like the actual shape and stuff. not necessarily what we're interested in. But when it comes to the execution time of actually performing that fluid simulation, we see the Genoa-X come up here. Surprisingly, the 32 core actually does very well. Little surprising, but we do see an advantage here. But this is a very small model. You know, this is one that you could run on a desktop processor and get a reasonable result on. Moving up to the driver fastback model, particularly the large version of it, it gets a lot more intense. So again, the mesh in the first result, not as interested in those, taking 667 seconds to figure out, about 10, 11 minutes. But when you actually run to do that fluid dynamics, we see Genoa-X way faster. This is saving you hours and hours and hours if you're doing this day in, day out. Huge positive result for the Genoa-X here. So it's all looking at how you can leverage these chips the right way and what makes sense for your particular workloads.
Yeah. And again, just to reiterate it, obviously Genoa-X, if we were to sort of encapsulate everything here, Genoa-X for big data analytics, scientific workloads, things like that, probably a good fit. And then Bergamo, again, if you need to scale to an obscene number of cores to handle as many containers or whatever, additional users per server. If your data center is totally optimized on compute footprint per square inch or something like that, that's where that thing will fit best. Marco, you've been quiet. We haven't let you speak, and we should wrap this baby up.
Yeah, no, Chris did a great. I love this review. Chris did an awesome job, and I love seeing the crazy horsepower out of these chips. And really, for AMD, it's all about offering choice for their customers to maximize the performance for their given workload. You have the Bergamo for cloud native, you have Genoa for mixed use cases, and you have Genoa-X for massive data sets. It's all good stuff. And the fact that you can just swap the CPUs into the same platform, AMD is doing a lot of good stuff here.
Yeah. It was in some ways hard to write this review because it was just, okay, it does what it says on the tin.
Yep.
It's that simple.
Yeah. And it's very specific and it's nuanced. And that's the thing to take away from this, is that there are lots of different types of workloads in the cloud. If you're looking at pure AI acceleration, well, a GPU, from NVIDIA or AMD in that case, certainly, or Intel, would be the right tool for the job. But when it comes to some of these pure CPU server workloads for whether it be cloud or data science, acceleration, then you can actually tune the core and the architecture to address that, and that's what these do. Good stuff from AMD. Boy, I think that wraps us, gents. We're a little bit over right now, so we should let these folks go. But you can find us on the web at hothardware.com. Twitter.com/hothardware, YouTube.com/hothardware. Hit thumbs up and subscribe, of course. We're going to be coming out with a giveaway. We haven't done that in a while, Marco. We got to get that going. Maybe a summer sweepstakes, huh?
Yeah,
something like
figure something out. I think we had one lined up and we never followed through with it. So we gotta get the ball rolling again.
Yeah, we will. We'll find a system, either a system partner or build one of our own. And we usually do some killer gaming rigs up for grabs. So stick around in the weeks ahead. That will be coming. And again, hit thumbs up, subscribe so you get notified when we go streaming. And until then, we thank you so much for stopping by.